Hey folks, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. And it's a Saturday, and it's a victory Saturday for the Nebraska Cornhuskers after a big win over Illinois on Friday night. I guess these Friday night games aren't such a bad thing for Nebraska. Danny, I know it was a late night for you last night, but
Mhm.
how you feeling this morning, man? Fresh off a big victory.
You know what? I like to call I always thought of last night's victory as just like me. It's not sexy, but it got the job done. And I think that there were a lot of positives. There were some concerning things, but the bottom line is a win's a win. And I know people will say, "Oh, we should be concerned with X, Y, and Z." But given that Illinois has given us so much trouble over the years, our first win against the Illini since 2019, I'll take it.
I am interested to see the fan reaction. I've been, the game got over so late, and I was streaming the game on my phone because I had to watch high school football games. So it's not like I could watch the game. Normally you can watch the game, then you look at social media on your phone. So I was, watching the game on my phone in between plays because I'm a multitasker. But and I'll never miss a Nebraska game. I don't care what I have to do. Some either listen or watch or whatever. Like work will not stop me. Um, but at any rate, I mean, I am interested to see what the reaction is today. So, if you guys are watching on the stream, I see some people joining. Add a comment to the chat. Let us know what you think about the win last night, and also make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel, so you don't miss any of our future content. But yeah, I guess the biggest thing to me is the last 2 years. Illinois just kind of out toughed Nebraska, and that's why they won, those two games under Brett Bielema. And last night, I felt like Nebraska turned the tables, and then the Huskers were the tougher team. They outrushed Illinois, I think, what was it, 148 or 158 to 21 or something. If you hold somebody at 21 yards, you're going to win the damn game like 99% of the time. So that was the impressive thing to me, is that they flipped the script there, and Nebraska for once was the tougher football team.
And they were able to play their game for the most part. And I understand that Nebraska had trouble scoring in the red zone and all of that, but by and large, Nebraska was able to control the game. I thought the defense did a fantastic job, and that was a big part of it. I mean, again, we were curious to see how the defense would respond after the loss to Michigan, and they responded in a big way. And I thought some of the newcomers, Princewell, Umamalian, and you know, I thought he did a really good job. He stepped up to the challenge, and I thought the secondary for the most part played well. There was that deep touchdown off of the beautiful throw from Luke Altmaier, but other than that, I thought the defense played really well, and they were definitely the bright spot of this game. Isaac Gifford was an absolute beast in this one. He did really well in coverage, and so he definitely deserves a lot of praise. And they stepped up to the plate. They were kind of called out by Matt Rule earlier in the week, and they stepped up and got the job done. So that was awesome to see. And credit to them. I thought the tone was really set on that goal line stand. They were just absolutely getting beaten that entire drive, but they saved their best effort for the goal line, and that was a huge play in the game because I fully believe it got them kind of refocused and got them back on track.
Yeah, and got the momentum. Riley Van
Yeah.
Poppel too, with a big stop on that fourth and goal. Shedding a blocker. Getting in there, making a play, and that's really good to see. Out of a freshman. You mentioned some other freshmen that are making some plays. So really good to see those young guys, especially on defense, kind of stepping up. And Malachi Coleman would have, if on the one pass that he got targeted twice. If Harburg hits him on that one pass, it might be there's like one guy there, so he maybe scores a touchdown, but it's at least like first and goal for Nebraska. So, and that's the thing. Harburg, he wasn't perfect last night. It's never gonna be perfect, but he had the one interception. They need to get better in the red zone, but he just sets the tone, man. He stiff arms guys. He's running people over. He's making the right decisions. It just doesn't. The moment isn't too big for him, and yeah, maybe Nebraska's not going to win, the Big Ten championship with him starting quarterback, but I think he can quarterback this team to a bowl game this year. So I hope that they continue to roll him out there as the starting quarterback, and I don't know why they wouldn't at this point.
The offensive efficiency in the red zone is something that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. I mean, they had a lot of chances last night to score, and they just couldn't get the job done. I mean, quite honestly, this was the worst Illinois team that I've seen in 4 years of watching the program. So I'm curious to see how that matches up when we play better competition. Um, and I thought, the line did okay, but there was a drive where it was two straight penalties on Turner Cochran, and it's just the same old story, different day. So that was frustrating, and you kind of have to wonder, you know, again, and I hate to bring this up, but is it time for Cochran to maybe take a back seat a little bit and give somebody else a shot? Because he really he took a second and manageable drive into third and or second and long and he just didn't look like he was ready to play last night.
There's been a lot of, pre-snap penalties on the offensive line too. I know Matt Rule
And then
talked about it.
sorry,
No,
go ahead.
well, I know Matt Rule talked about it last night too, but yeah, I wonder if with the bye week when you first brought up Corcoran, my thought was, they've got the bye week now. If Teddy, obviously, I don't think Teddy Prohashka would be in the game at all if he wasn't healthy. So if there's ever a time to make this switch, I feel like now is it. So we'll see. I guess we'll have to see what that depth chart looks like. Obviously, I don't think we'll get one this week, but going into the Northwestern game, but yeah, he just hasn't been very good at left tackle. He's just not, for whatever reason, he just can't quite get the job done. And you're right about the red zone efficiency too. I mean, you look at, Tristan missed another field goal, but you have, basically three turnovers on the plus 50, so I mean, that game shouldn't even have been close in the fourth quarter.
No.
I mean, Illinois was driving and they got down to like the 30, and the defense obviously held them on the 4th and 2 or whatever it was, but it was a lot dicier than it needed to be. It could have been an onside kick, and it never should have come down to that if the offense just would have executed in the red zone.
And look, I mentioned Turner Cochran. I also have to mention Ben Scott's personal foul penalty. I mean, it's just stuff like that that you just can't have that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I kind of defended Marcus Satterfeld last week because we played Michigan and the line was bad, and Michigan's defensive line was good, yada yada yada. But honestly, I didn't think Friday night was his best game calling plays either. I didn't think. I thought he made things a little bit too complicated. I know we really couldn't run the football, but at the same time, it just his play calling, especially inside the red zone, was kind of predictable and stagnant.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. I have a hard time, criticizing play. I try to look at how many times guys touch the ball and certain things like that because it is difficult to know. But whatever the case is, they need to execute better in the red zone. You can't be scoring a touchdown like 50% of the time in the red zone. That you just can't do that. And with this defense, when you get into the red zone, you have to cash in, and they didn't do that last night, especially on some takeaways they didn't cash in. So that was especially disappointing, I thought.
And Sam, good morning, Sam. We see you on our pages all the time, and we appreciate it. And he makes a good point here. 5 false starts. I mean, and this is just, and it's easy for me to say because I'm sitting in my chair in my cushy house and whatever, but that's just inexcusable. Like 5 false starts, those are momentum and drive killers. And then, we just talked about Ben Scott's 15-yard penalty. I mean, I get playing physical and I get finishing your block, but you got to know when to stop. And it seems like a lot of the miscues, whether it be pass protection penalties, are coming from the offensive line. And yes, it's the players, but to me, some of that responsibility also falls on Donovan Raiola as well. And um, it's going to be interesting to see if this continues, because if it does, I mean, I don't see there's any reason to keep Raiola because I'm not seeing that jump or of improvement in the offensive line that I was hoping for, and not only was I hoping for, but fans were hoping for as well. Like I'm not seeing improved results.
I mean, I do think that I think that Bryce Benhurt has improved. I do think that I think there's been some improvement. I mean, in the running game, especially, I mean, Nebraska, they didn't run the ball great last night, but they were leading the Big Ten in rushing going into the game last night. So I do think that there are some positives there.
And
So I'm not
Illinois has a good defensive line too.
They do have a good defensive line. I liked how they incorporated kind of the speed option. I thought that was a real productive play. Hopefully, they can get healthy at running back. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how things go. I think I do like this recruiting class. I like the class that they signed in 2023. So I like the direction that the offensive line's going. We'll just have to see how it goes by the end of the season. But they've got to figure out left tackle. And Brian Munson, he, wrote this week that Nebraska probably needs to land two tackles, in the transfer portal. And I don't disagree with him. It's just you'd feel a lot better about this offensive line. I feel like if Walter Roush, had not flipped his commitment at the last second.
Yeah.
The problem, that I thought at reading that article is that, yeah, okay. The issue is that really good offensive tackles, there's like 10 of them in the portal and they all go to the highest bidder. So Nebraska really is going to have to get its shit together in the portal if they're going to make one of those additions happen this year.
Yeah, it seems like everybody needs an offensive tackle, right? I mean, that's the
Yeah,
position that teams circle. And one other thing that I don't know if you caught that I caught as well was that as soon as an offensive play was called, a timeout followed. So it seemed like maybe Satterfield and Rule weren't on the same page to begin things, and Matt Rule wanted to correct some play calls, which was kind of interesting to me because I actually saw it against Louisiana Tech too. So that the miscommunication part is interesting to me only because you have to wonder what type of offense they want to run because you see them try to go, four wide, throw the ball down the field. You see them run the football. I mean, I don't know if it's a personnel thing because, quite frankly, we don't have a lot to work with, especially at the wide receiver position right now, or if it's truly a miscommunication between Satterfield and Rule.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some communication issues. I just think that the offense is just a work in progress, and they don't. It's you're playing a pretty inexperienced quarterback. I mean, so there could be times where, you know, Harburg and I've seen plays where there's guys wide open and Heinrich just doesn't see him. So
Mm.
so that's what like if the execution was better, maybe the play calling would look better. So I mean, I just think that it's on everybody. I mean, the offensive line, you can't be false starting, and then when you're sitting there, in second and 15 or first and 15, that's not a good situation to be in as a play caller. And then, when you like on one of the plays, it was a third down, I believe, or in the second half, and Fedoni was wide open inside the
Mhm.
10-yard line, and Heinrich just missed. I mean, just missed him by a good yard. So it's like, that's not on play calling, that's more on the execution. So I'm not saying the play calling couldn't be better. I just think that the execution could be better too. And whatever. I mean, they've got to stop fumbling. They've got to get rid of the penalties. There's a lot for the offense to clean up, but I guess the positive thing is, at least right now, the one thing we do know that we have is a freaking defense, and maybe the best defense in the Big Ten West right now.
And I think we also have a really good tight end in Thomas Fedoni. I don't think, like you said earlier this week, that he's fully healthy yet, but he's making the most of what he is working with right now. And we saw him, him and Harburg seem to have a strong connection, so that's really good to see as well. And you know, anytime a quarterback has a good tight end as a safety valve, that's always a positive. So I liked Fedoni's play last night. I liked Isaac Gifford's play last night. And I was also really impressed with Emmett Johnson. I thought he burst through holes quickly and was able to kind of showcase his speed and get yards. You know, and get to the second level. So I'm curious to see how Johnson's development, comes into play over the rest of the season because with Grant kind of banged up and Ramir Johnson and Gabe Irvin all out, there's going to be opportunities for other running backs to step up. And I wonder when Quentin Ives is going to get a shot because with the way this offense runs and things like that, you're going to need as many running backs as you can get on deck. Too bad Kawan Lacey is not here already and in the running back room for Nebraska.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to be getting down the depth chart pretty soon. Hopefully, the Anthony Grant injury isn't too serious, because that is one that Nebraska just really can't afford right now. It was a really big blow when Gabe Irvin went out. Like, I don't think it's been talked about enough, like how big of a loss that was. And then, but you're like, oh, it's okay because Anthony Grant, basically was 1,000-yard rusher last year. So then, if you lose him, so I'm just like have my fingers crossed. I don't know. I didn't. It's always, you just never know with injuries, but yeah, the defense was spectacular last night. I mean, they can get better. I mean, everything can always get better, but I think that, anytime you hold a team in the Big Ten on their home field to 7 points, I think that's a spectacular. You can't do much better than that. And then holding a team to 21 rushing yards. So there's a lot to feel good about on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, the running game, because look, this offense, and another thing I actually was going to say, sorry, I got sidetracked there, but with Fedoni, I thought last night was the best that he's looked.
Yeah.
Getting in and out of his breaks, he just is looking, and it's like, with Michigan and Blake Corum, the first few games of this season, he did not look like Blake Corum. It was like the Rutgers game, and then last week against Nebraska, I thought he looked the most like. It just takes time to get confidence back, not only being healthy, but just knowing that you can make, plant and do all those things. So I think by the end of, every single week, Thomas is getting closer to being what, his true self. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see, I think it's like, it's like when Wes Welker, remember Wes Welker towards, he was
Oh
good
yeah.
the next year, but 2 years after that, you're like, okay, that's Wes Welker. You know what I mean? So that's where I feel like we're at with Thomas Fedoni, but it is an exciting progression. And he definitely is the most reliable playmaker on offense, especially, and with another Marcus Washington is injured too. So, I
Yeah.
mean, just hopefully, it's nice to have a bye week, and man, it's really nice to have a win. Could you imagine? I was just thinking about that. It's got to feel good to be, or Matt Rule has to feel good right now, because if they had lost this game, man, it would have been a long 2 weeks.
Yeah, and even still, people aren't happy with the win, but I'll take it. And you touched on it a little bit. The injury to Marcus Washington. I mean, that is, we're getting into the scary territory in terms of wide receivers. I mean, not scary, but I mean, a lot of freshmen are getting an opportunity to play. Um, we saw, as reported before the game, Bryce Turner and Jeremiah Charles moving to defensive back. So you wonder who will be able to step up at wide receiver. And it just seems like injuries have killed us, not just this year, but the past 2 or 3 years. And you wonder, what Nebraska's gonna be able to do, in terms of the receiving game moving forward, because not only do you lose a playmaker in Washington, but you lose that veteran experience. And we're already seeing how important that is, because of Billy Kemp, and, how Harburg is kinda relying on Kemp to get those, safety valve throws. So, now with Washington no longer in the picture, it'll be interesting to see who steps up. And, some of these freshmen are gonna have to, come in and play right away. I mean, Coleman obviously I think is gonna get more run, and we'll see who else comes in and steps up.
I'm not sure, Brian, if we got to this comment, but 70 yards and penalties needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
Time of possession was a major win for Nebraska. It's
Yep.
always nice to win the time of possession while on the road. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, they really controlled the game, but it should have been, like we said, it should have been like a 31-7. There just was a lot of meat on the bone, which I think can be a positive and a negative thing, because I mean, in one sense, there's the inefficiency, but two, I mean, once they get that stuff nailed down and dialed down, which I think they will eventually, depending on the opponent, this offense could be maybe a little better than we expected. But it does hurt to lose Washington, because he's a guy that, he had a 30-yard reception. He's one of the few guys
On a
on the
good ball by
offense.
Harburg, that
Yeah,
30-yard pass was a nice throw.
and he's one of the few guys, maybe the only guy, that's maybe him and Fedoni, that have had, multiple games with the 20-yard, receptions. Those aren't easy plays to make, and Nebraska doesn't have, a lot of guys. We did see. I thought it was good to see Malachi though, and caught a pass, and like I said, he was wide open on that other play if Harburg doesn't miss him. And so I think it'll be good just to get this team to reset. But just mindset wise, it just feels like a totally different season. If you lose, you're like at 2-4, and yeah, it's not over yet in terms of getting to a bowl game. But like now we're sitting at, we talked about this yesterday in the, in our predictions and stuff, but being at 3-3, for one, it makes a bowl game feel much more likely. And also, like, you're sitting at 1-2, it's like, hey, they could get back into the mix in the Big Ten West if they could win. Northwestern's at home. You've got 2 home games. If you can just, I know one game at a time, but if you can win these next 2 games, then this team is going to be feeling really good about itself.
Yeah, and first win against Illinois since 2019, so it's always good to pick up another victory. And I think there was a lot of good. I know we talked a lot about the negative, but there was a lot of good, and the team's resiliency on the road. I mean, to me, that goal line stand we talked about earlier, exemplified, the type of grit that this team had, and it was a classic Big Ten game in every sense of the word. It was physical, running the football, you know, not not necessarily the flashy plays, but plays to get into the end zone. And Nebraska did a good job of controlling the clock and limiting those explosive plays on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, Brian wishes they would announce the time for the Northwestern game. I'm sure we'll probably get that early this week, would be my
No more
guess.
night games, please.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm wondering. They'd like to put Nebraska in the night games if they don't have anything else because they know people are going to watch it on the Big Ten Network or whatever. But I like the 3:30, but we'll see what happens. I don't care. Just freaking beat Northwestern. Let's
We'll
just
probably get it on a Thursday or something because they love to schedule these weird Thursday and Friday games. I'm kidding, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Jim Adams hated to see the cheap shot by our center in the second half.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
the Ben Scott play. That wasn't smart at all,
there
honestly.
was yeah, there's nothing you can't there's no defending that. 11 yeah, 11 a.m. would be fine to me for me. I like that the 11 a.m. start time. The earlier games I do like better. I'm not a big night game person, but they are fun to go to. There was some highlights going around of the game from like 1992 when they beat Kansas to go to the Orange Bowl. I was actually at that game. It was freezing cold, I remember, and it's so funny now because like back then I was talking to my dad about this recently, but like you had oranges that they were just handing out and just chucked them onto the field with reckless abandon, and that was totally fine. And it was like encouraged. And now if you threw a piece of fruit on the field, you'd like get ejected and maybe arrested. But back then there just was no, there was no and they were probably not the safest thing is just even though they had helmets, you're just lobbing these oranges like hundreds of feet down into the but anyways,
I wasn't even born yet, people, so,
the the
listen to
glory
the old
days.
man for his Nebraska stories because I wasn't born yet, but
This
no,
is
but,
the glory days of
I
sports,
was gonna
man. Like
say
anyway.
the orange like, the Orange Bowl and stuff like that, I mean, last night showed we're a little far away from that yet, but we got a victory, so I can't complain. Even I when I can't complain, it's a good day.
Yeah, I can complain about the turnovers and the red zone stuff, but it's a lot better to complain about those things after a loss. It's a lot better to be in the position to say, "Oh, we need to fix this," but to do it after a win, instead of a loss is a lot better. So, I feel good about that, and I do feel like that Heinrich is making progress. It's not going to always look pretty, but I feel like he's just the right quarterback for this team. He's only got 2 interceptions and 4 starts. He did have I think he had a fumble, but I don't think we lost that one last night.
That was a bad snap
Oh,
too.
okay. Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, it was kinda low, in my opinion, so I don't entirely blame that on him, but, I mean, it did make the drive a little bit more difficult.
But I like that I think that they've at least found something with him running the football. I mean, I know it didn't work against Michigan, but Michigan is not most teams. They're not going to see another defense anywhere close to Michigan the rest of the year. So, I mean, like Michigan State, Maryland's tough. That's gonna be
Mm.
Maryland's probably the toughest outside of Iowa, just because I respect Wisconsin too. Those are going to be tough games to win, but that Maryland game, I think they're going to give Ohio State a battle today. I really think that people are kind of underestimating. I don't know how they're not ranked. They've won all 5 of their games. excuse me, all 5 of their games by at least 17 points, and they're still not ranked. It's kind of surprising. Anyway, not to get too much off of another tangent. Fedoni, Gifford, Hartzog, Irvin, Prohashka, all sophomores. Pretty solid sophomore class. So Rule's third year will have a nice, solid senior class, which tends to be his best year at his previous programs. I think that's a good point, Brian. Look, I think that Matt Rule right now. I mean, how much different would we feel if Anthony Grant hadn't fumbled that ball against Minnesota, and we're sitting here at 4-2 and 2-1 in the Big Ten West right now? How much different would we feel about the job Matt Rule has done? Because look, in 3 games against Power 5 teams outside of Michigan, Nebraska's held all 3 of them to under 60 yards rushing. When's the last time Nebraska has done that? And they're leading. They might not be anymore, but coming into this week, they're leading the Big Ten in rushing yards per game. So I mean, the kind of football and the brand of football that he's establishing, it just has me really excited. And Tony White was a great hire. Satterfield, we'll have to see how that works out. But there's a lot I feel like good things about this team, and regardless of the play calling or the offensive line or whatever, like they're still finding a way to run the football, and that's if you outrush your opponent by 137 yards, like 80% of the time, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but probably 80% of the time you're going to win the game.
Yeah, and I also think that for how he stepped into the role, Josh Martin's done a good job at tight ends as well. I mean, you're seeing the tight ends still produce and still, be productive and things like that. So there is a lot of credit to go around with this coaching staff. Tony White, obviously, to me, is the biggest. You know, his stock has risen the most so far this season, and I think as long as we clean up the fumbles in terms of rushing the football and we continue to make the most of our runs, then we should have a solid rushing attack moving forward.
Well, it's not easy. There's thinking road games at Michigan State and a road game at Wisconsin. Trying to think where other there's one other one in there I'm missing, I believe. But
And this point by Brian here is also very notable. 19 players next year on the defense side of the football will be returning. I mean, that's how you continue to progress and build a program.
and build depth too. I mean, that's another thing with like with the injuries. If it's like Georgia or Michigan or out, like the injuries, yeah, like a certain, yeah, like if Georgia lost, well, I was going to say Brock Bowers, but their other tight ends are freaking awesome. So it's just like when every guy on the team's a top 100 recruit, and I'm not saying Nebraska's ever going to be that way, but they can develop their own depth. And so I feel like, this year they've done a really good job of doing that. They're playing a lot of guys, and so looking into next year, all these guys are going to have experience. And so it's going to be, like, and Buford it's looking like they're going to try to aim for that, bring him back for the last 4 games and then have him come back next year. So, there's going to be a lot of depth and talent. I mean, like, I can't see, guys like, Ty Robinson, I guess, could probably leave some of those guys if they wanted to, but I don't see anybody on this defense like leaving early for the draft, you know?
And I don't want to. I guess I'll just say, don't make the same mistake that Garrett Nelson did. That's my thing with them. I think a guy like Ty
Garrett
Robinson
Nelson would
would.
have been so good in this defense too. I
Yep.
mean, like he would have had probably 8 sacks in this defense. Like
Yep. That
especially with like the way that Nash and Ty are playing inside. I mean,
would have
like
opened up a lot of opportunities for him.
and actually one on because I mean Leonard's winning those one-on-ones and some of these other guys. So it would have been this defense with Garrett Nelson would be freaking nasty. But
Yeah. I think Nelson made a little bit of a mistake, but that's okay. I mean, I'm not going to judge him too badly. But when you look at the 2024 class coming in, you have Willis McGahee, and you have players like Ashton Murphy and Braylon Prude, so and Mario Buford. So there is a chance for I think these guys to really make an impact next year as well. So I just
hopefully
hope, yeah,
Caleb Benning.
yeah, hopefully Caleb Benning. I mean, I just hope we can keep the class together because as you wrote earlier this week, Kawan Lacey is getting interest from Florida. So I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, you always have to, protect your commitments. But
Carlin Jones is coming next year too, and I think he's gonna have a
yeah,
chance to
Carlin
be an
Jones.
impact player.
And that's another, teams were coming after him too, and there hasn't been, too much movement. So I feel like they're in a good spot there. But we'll see. If Kawan Lacey takes a visit, then yeah, I'll be like, a lot worried about it. A lot more worried about it, I should say, if he, goes to the swamp or whatever. But because they really need him. I mean, they really need him, especially. I just feel like he's going to be, because Carter Nelson, it's going to take him a second to kind of figure out what to do, how to use him. It's not like he plays tight end, now in the 8-man game. He's like running and passing. And so I think they're going to find ways to get him the ball, but I think it is going to take a little bit of time, for him to settle into like a true position. Whereas running back, it's, that's whether it's coming up from like high school to college or college to pro, it's always been one of the positions where guys can make an impact early because it's like, here's the ball, go run. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
So
And just looking towards the future, Gibson Pyle will be coming in, so we'll be able to get line help there. And
He's a mauler too.
he is a mauler. I
He's
mean,
really underrated as a got the invite to the All American Bowl. He's a tough SOB, and that's the kind of guy you want on your offensive line.
he could start right now, I think, if he can in Nebraska.
I think he could have a good chance. I definitely think he could have a good chance. He's one of those guys. I think he's a high school tackle that they're going to make a guard, and I like doing that because then I feel like he's got the physicality of a guard, but he also has, like the passing skills of a tackle. So and I don't rule out the possibility of him being a right tackle, just like I don't, like Preston Toma could eventually be like a left tackle. You just never really know, but it'll be interesting to see how some of those guys develop and get in because that's the thing too. You get them in the weight room and you totally change bodies. And I think we're going to be better. Nebraska is going to be at developing people too.
Jake Peters, he might fly under the radar a little bit, but I think he's going to be a sneaky good addition as well. So there is a lot to be hopeful for with the future. I hope that
And we still have a
good.
good shot, I think, at Grant Bricks too. So
What's the deal with Grant Bricks?
just I don't know. He's really quiet in his recruitment. He's not visited anywhere else. I know that Oklahoma, I think, is kind of trending for another tackle, and Kansas State, I think, is trending for another tackle too. Not that that necessarily means anything, but nothing as far as I know. But if Nebraska could get Bricks and Caleb Benning, I would call it a day and be freaking happy as hell as long as they can keep everybody else.
Yeah, no, that would be a solid class, and we'll have to see what happens there. But as for now, I mean, let's just keep these wins coming, and the recruits will follow.
That winning definitely helps, but I mean, if you play defense, this looks like a fun team to play for. If I was Caleb Benning, I would want to. I mean, I think he pretty much said that in some of his interviews after the last visit. So, I do think that and Jay Sean Ross too. I shouldn't forget about him because he's kind of, even though he's an athlete, he's probably an edge, but he would be a really good get too. And so all three of those guys, Bricks, Ross, and Benning, have all said they're going to decide like soon. And so
Hmm.
I have no idea what that means, but I feel like Nebraska's like probably the leader right now with all those guys. But that's just because you got the lead on the 15 on the 69th hole doesn't mean you
Yep.
still got to finish the holes out. So we'll see how that goes. But it's I'm feeling good though, man. I'm gonna ride the wave of this win for the next 2 weeks, and I'm gonna enjoy it. It's gonna make watching college football so much better today. I just enjoy.
Relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can actually enjoy. I just get. I don't know. It's like I get this weird envy when I watch other teams play good, and then it pisses me off that I can't. I just keep thinking about the loss. So I'm gonna be able to actually enjoy it. So it's gonna be nice.
I'm gonna be able to watch some red zone efficiency today, which will fire me up because we
Do not have red zone efficient.
no
What's the opposite word of efficient? I don't even know what it is. I can't think of it. But
deficient.
yeah, yeah, we're deficient.
We have,
That's
but
funny.
I
Yeah,
mean,
Brian's talking about. We'll throw it up in the chat here. Malachi Nicholson. I'm a running back out of
I had
Oklahoma.
heard about this guy. Yeah,
520 yards. Not everybody. You know, not everybody, or he's not even mentioned on the recruiting sites yet. So, yeah, there's guys like that. Your senior evaluations are really important. There's a lot of guys that are, kind of making their way, getting their first chance to play sometimes too. But everyone's screaming to fire. This is from Sam. From everyone screaming to fire Rayola and Satterfield doesn't help get guys like Bricks. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I personally I don't think Rayola's going anywhere based off what I've seen so far. I don't that's just my opinion. I think he's done a better job. Like Ben-Hur, I think has improved. Corcoran, I just don't think Turner Corcoran's a left tackle. And I think the only true left tackle on the roster, at least ready to play right now, is probably a Prohashka. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
I wonder when we'll see him. Yeah,
If it's not going to be after this bye week, when is it going to be? That's what he's playing some. They're using him some, so he's obviously healthy enough to be out there. So if he's not going to play after this bye week, I don't know when it would be. Maybe
yeah.
because it's not like you can't bank any playing time in the Big Ten. It's not like you think like, oh, it'd be great to beat Northwestern by 3-4 touchdowns. But even if you do that, you're still not like putting your backups in, So It's not like he's going to have any more like a ton of garbage time to just like accumulate snaps.
Yeah, and so you wonder, like you said, when he's gonna slide in. I'd like to see him kinda get a chance just to see what we have there, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, right now, I think what we see on the line is what we're gonna get, and we're just gonna have to make do.
Yeah, and it'll be nice. It's at least I feel like it's better in that right right tackle isn't a disaster. I think that Bryce has definitely improved. I don't know if he's to the point where he's an NFL draft pick yet, but I definitely think he's improved. So it's not there's not like a 5 alarm fire on both ends of that. So hopefully they can just if you have one bad spot, you can kind of somewhat management with some help and play calling and stuff like that. And like I said, this is going to be a running team. Let's run the ball, lean into it, be a good defensive team. I think it's best if Heinrich, last night he threw it 21 times. I said it's best if he throws it about 20 times. So, last night was pretty much perfect if they could just execute in the red zone. If they don't miss the field goal, they don't have the fumbles, they probably score over 30 points. And I think with this offense, like that's as good as it gets. Scoring in the 30s is as good as it gets. And with this defense, if this team can score just in the 20s, they're going to win a hell of a lot of games.
I personally don't like it, but the ball gets to mostly where it needs to go, so we'll see. Well, although I do notice that there's a lot of passes batted down on the line, so I'd love to see him throw over the top, but, I mean, again, I think what we see is what we're gonna get. I'm not a huge fan, but, I mean, he is sorta producing, so, I mean, there you go.
I don't give a shit as long as it's completed, frankly. Like it doesn't always look pretty, but he had the one sidearm on the fourth down, right? I mean, so that was pretty big.
The catch to Fedoni?
I thought it was the Bullock, but I
Oh,
could
there
be
yeah,
wrong.
that's right, it was. You're right, yep.
Um, but anyway, so I don't know. It's not.
Meh.
It's just I think he just knows that his throwing motion's kind of funky, and sometimes he just knows that if he throws regular, it's going to get swatted down. So it's like whatever he's got to do, man. If he has to like underhand pitch it to get there, just as long as it's completed, I just don't care. But
I will
I
say the receivers seem to be used to it because the one he threw to Bullock was an absolute bullet, and Bullock was still able to come down with it, so
Yeah, he's improving. Like he's definitely improving. He's getting more confidence, and like as long as just don't turn the ball over. Just that's the one gripe. He did have the interception last night, but it was super windy too. That wasn't a great
yeah,
environment
he
to
was
throw the
throwing in
ball
the
in.
wind for sure. It was like 35-mile-an-hour winds lately.
Yeah, I mean, rules said they weren't kicking basically unless they were inside the 20. So I mean that's a 37-yard field goal. So that tells you what the wind
Even
was like.
Tristan's missed field goal, like, I understood what he was trying to do. He was trying to have the ball, like, carry to the left a little bit, but it just carried too much. But I understood because of the wind why you would kick it like that because you start off on the other side of the goalpost, and then you hope that the wind or whatever kinda carries the ball over to the other side. So, I understood that. It just was too much to the left when all was said and done.
I did, yeah, it looked like it wasn't a perfect, the operation didn't look 100% perfect either, snap and hold and all
No, the
that.
snap was pretty bad.
Yeah, so,
So
he made 2 out of 3, and I like Matt Rule's confidence in Tristan. I'm not worried about like, I don't have a long-term excuse me. I don't have a long-term concern about him as the kicker, so I like
no.
that Matt Rule stuck with him.
I would rather have I would rather develop a kicker and stick with them through good and bad than have, 3 kickers in 3 years from the transfer portal. So,
I
there is
realized
that.
what I forgot my morning beer. My coaster's here empty. I should have had my morning beer here to fix.
What
That's what I messed up with this podcast. It's the one
what's your
thing I
drink of
forgot.
choice? What's your drink of choice?
It's called oh my god, it's called Miner's Gold. Is actually it's the beer that I like the best. It's brewed here locally in Helena, Montana. So you probably
Hmm,
have never tried it, but other than that, I like a good Bud Light.
Bud Light, okay, that's interesting because Bud Light's really popular here. And then are you familiar with Wormtown Brewery at all?
I'm not.
That must be a local thing here because I love their Bee Hoppy IPA, and it's so good, and I'm glad I don't have any right now because I'd be drunk doing this, but, it
As
we can
long as it
sell
has As long as it has alcohol, though, that's the main thing, the main ingredient.
We can we can celebrate after a win. So
Kegs and eggs, they'll.
just, just like the team, we don't know how to win yet. So we got you got to cut us some slack when we celebrate these victories. And I think, like you said, just to kind of bring things back a little bit, this win was a big one on the road. I understand it wasn't pretty, but anytime, honestly, anytime you can beat a Brett Bielema team, that's impressive because I think they're very well coached. And you know, we'll have to see how the rest of the season plays out. But this was definitely a statement win, especially after Matt Rule came out and said, "We'll find out what these guys are made of on Friday." Well, we found out, and by and large, the results were pretty good.
And you have to give him credit too, because that whole Sunday practice could have
Hmm.
blown up in his face. If they lose this game, if they lost the game last night, then and people would have been, if there would have been like a fourth quarter collapse, then oh well, Matt shouldn't have practiced them on Sunday, and they were too
Yeah,
tired, and it's like that going for it on fourth down. If it works, it's a great call. If not, they're like, oh, should have kicked it. But so that's what I felt like about that decision. But the players really, I felt like responded to it, and whatever you want to say about Matt Rule, he's got the pulse of this team right now, and they're playing hard for him. And this was a game that Nebraska would have lost in the past, playing at Illinois, playing at Wisconsin, Minnesota, these Big Ten West teams, these competitive Big Ten West teams, they have not won these games with consistency. So I thought it was huge to do that on the road. And I just feel like now a bowl game is much more realistic going into the second half of the season.
yeah, and I think too. That Sunday practice kind of helped them get the bad taste of the Michigan game out of their mouths, and it was a chance for them to reset, refocus, and they, were up to the challenge on Friday night.
They definitely were. Let's see. We'll probably be wrapping up here soon, guys. If you've got any other comments, throw them in the chat. But yeah, it feels good to be enjoying a Big Ten win. We haven't had too many Big Ten wins over the last few years, so I'm soaking it in right now. I'm freaking just loving it because after that first drive, I was like, oh man, I
Yeah.
wasn't feeling too great.
Illinois moved the football
Yeah,
way too easy on that first drive. Way too
yeah.
easy.
Yeah, the rest of the game defensively went about as I expected. I thought that we would shut them down. Although I honestly I didn't think that we would shut them down that much, but
No.
the run defense is really good. So it's honestly it makes the fact that Michigan ran for 250 or whatever like even more impressive. Like, because this Nebraska run defense is damn good.
It is, and I thought by and large the passing defense was pretty good last night. I thought they were a little more aggressive, attacking, and there was some good plays by Tommy Hill last night as well. So, I mean, I thought it was a good reset game for the defense as well.
Yeah, Phelan Sanford knocking the ball loose. Looks like Northwestern is going to come out passing. They don't look like a strong rushing team. Yeah, I want to say Bart Bryant is the quarterback. I know
Yep.
it's something Bryant. He's been playing pretty well. They've been playing. They were competitive against Penn State. They came back against Minnesota. So I don't. There's no game in the Big Ten is a gimme. You've got to play well. But obviously, I know people are thinking about the last 2 years ago when we beat the crap out of Northwestern, but it's not going to be like that. I don't think. But I
I would
I
definitely
do.
like one of those games.
Oh, I'd love that. I would. I think Nebraska could come out and you know really physically dominate that game, but you gotta show up and do it. Sanford is one of the best pure athletes on the team from San. It was great to see him, get in there and make a huge play. And just I felt like Nebraska got rewarded for. I mean, they've been just knocking the shit out of people. I mean, hitting people hard, and it was good to see the ball finally come out.
It was also good to see the first career interception for Quentin Newsom last night. Good for him to
That's
get on the board
that's crazy. That's like the craziest stat to me that, that he
because
has.
he's been here for forever. So,
Yeah, he's
I
a
mean,
yeah, he's a stud though. But yeah, the defense, they won the game last night, so I got to give them the props. The black shirts are legit. They legitimately deserve to be called black shirts this year.
and it's just crazy when you think about the energy that they're playing with, and You talked about the Matt Rule having the pulse of this team right now. Tony White definitely has the pulse of his defense, and he's doing a really good job so far here. And you know, um, I think it will make for a very entertaining game against Northwestern in a couple weeks.
It's going to be a fun second half of the season after this win. It was fun joining this chat with you guys. Everybody, thanks for joining. Make sure you check out
Thanks, everybody.
huskerbigred.com. We've got, some takeaways, some 5 things that we learned. I've got that posted up this morning. I'm sure Danny will have some stuff too.
Yeah.
So check out huskerbigred.com. We'll be back with another podcast on Monday. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.